every prayer you have ever prayed asking for strength, you already possessed the strength. Every time you begged for wisdom, you already had the wisdom. Every moment you pleaded for guidance, you already knew the way. Every request for provision, you already had the provision. You have been praying to receive what you already have, asking for what you already possess, seeking what you already are. The heavens have been silent, not because your prayers are unanswered, but because the answer has always been you. The miracle you have been waiting for is not coming from above. It is coming from within. You are not waiting for a divine intervention. You are the divine intervention. A man stands before a mirror every morning, searching for someone else's reflection, never recognizing the power staring back at him. This is humanity's greatest tragedy. For 37 years, Marcus walked past the same mirror in his hallway, and for 37 years, he saw inadequacy. He saw someone who needed more education, more money, more connections, more luck. He saw someone incomplete, someone waiting for life to happen to him. But mirrors don't lie. They simply reflect what is. The problem was never the mirror. The problem was Marcus had been trained to see through the eyes of lack instead of the eyes of abundance. He had been programmed to search for his value in tomorrow's possibilities rather than today's realities. This is the fundamental deception that has crippled generations. We have been conditioned to believe that our answers exist somewhere out there, in some future version of ourselves, in some external circumstance, in some other person's approval. We have been taught to be eternal seekers instead of recognizing that we are already finders. Listen to me carefully. The moment you came into this world, you didn't arrive empty-handed. You came fully loaded with everything required for your assignment on this earth. The manufacturer doesn't ship incomplete products. You are not a rough draft waiting for someone else to complete you. You are the finished product, fully equipped for your purpose, but somewhere along the way, the world convinced you otherwise. Your parents, though well-meaning, looked at you and saw potential that needed development. Your teachers looked at you and saw a student who needed filling. Your society looked at you and saw a consumer who needed purchasing. Everyone around you reinforced the same lie. You are not enough as you are. This external focus created what I call the dependency syndrome. You learn to measure your worth by your circumstances. Good circumstances meant you were valuable. Bad circumstances meant you were lacking. Your emotions became enslaved to conditions you couldn't control. Your confidence became dependent on other people's opinions. Your peace became hostage to external stability. The tragedy is that while you were busy looking outside yourself for validation, completion, and direction, the very thing you were seeking was growing stronger inside you. While you were checking your phone for someone else's approval, your internal approval system was withering from neglect. While you were searching for your purpose in career opportunities, your true calling was sending signals from within that you kept ignoring. Marcus discovered this truth on an ordinary Tuesday morning. He was rushing to catch a flight for another job interview, another external opportunity to prove his worth. As he grabbed his keys, he glanced at the mirror, and for the first time in decades, he stopped. Not because he was fixing his appearance, but because something in his reflection commanded attention. For a moment, he saw what had always been there. Not someone lacking, but someone complete. Not someone seeking, but someone who had already found. Not someone waiting for permission, but someone who was the authority in his own life. The shift was so profound that he missed his flight. But more importantly, he found his life that day. Marcus began the journey from external seeking to internal recognition. He stopped asking the world to validate what he already knew about himself. He stopped waiting for circumstances to align before he felt worthy. He stopped postponing his happiness until some future achievement. The mirror had not changed. Marcus had changed. He had shifted from seeing through the lens of limitation to seeing through the lens of completeness. He had moved from the consciousness of lack to the consciousness of abundance. He had graduated from being a seeker to being a finder. This is not positive thinking. This is not self-help philosophy. This is the recognition of a fundamental truth. You are not a human being seeking a spiritual experience. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. You are not a body with a soul. You are a soul with a body. You are not a problem looking for a solution. You are a solution looking for a problem to solve. The resources you need are not coming. They are already here. The strength you need is not developing. It is already developed. The wisdom you need is not being acquired. It is already acquired. The love you need is not being earned. It is already earned. Everything you have been seeking outside of yourself has been resident within you since the day you were born. When you truly understand this, everything changes. Your relationship with challenges changes because you no longer see them as evidence of your inadequacy, but as opportunities to demonstrate your capability. Your relationship with other people changes because you no longer need them to complete you, but you can appreciate them for who they are. Your relationship with circumstances changes because you no longer wait for them to be perfect before you act perfectly. The mirror's truth is simple. You are not the seeker. You are the sought. You are not the student. You are the teacher. You are not the question. You are the answer. The power you have been searching for in degrees and positions and relationships and bank accounts has been looking back at you every morning, waiting for recognition. Stop seeking outside of yourself. Start recognizing within yourself. The treasure you have been digging for in distant lands is buried in your own backyard. The king you have been waiting to crown you is the one wearing your face. The validation you have been seeking from the world is the validation you give yourself. This is where transformation begins, not in the acquisition of something new, but in the recognition of something eternal. Not in the changing of your circumstances, but in the changing of your perspective. Not in the search for yourself, but in the finding of yourself. Maria Rodriguez had walked past the old industrial building on 5th Street for 12 years, every morning on her way to work. The windows were dusty, the exterior looked weathered, and she had always assumed it was abandoned, like most people. She saw what appeared to be dormant and concluded it was dead. But appearances can be the greatest liars. One evening, working late at the office, Maria noticed something strange. Lights were on in that old building, not just any lights, but the kind that indicated production, activity, life. Curious, she approached the building and heard the unmistakable sounds of machinery, of work being done, of creation in progress. This abandoned factory had been operational all along. She had simply never noticed the production happening inside. This is the perfect metaphor for your life. You have been walking past your own internal factory for years, maybe decades, assuming it was abandoned, inactive, or insufficient. You have been looking at your life through the lens of limitation, seeing dormancy where there is actually dynamic activity. You have been concluding that you need to go somewhere else, find something else, become someone else, when the greatest manufacturing plant in the universe has been running inside you all along. You are not a consumer of life, you are a manufacturer of destiny. You are not a spectator waiting for someone else to create your reality. You are the factory owner, the production manager, and the quality control specialist of your own existence. The machinery is already installed. The power supply is already connected. The raw materials are already stocked. The only thing missing is your recognition of what you already possess. But here is where most people make the critical error. They try to manufacture their lives using someone else's blueprint. They try to produce their future using someone else's vision. They try to create their destiny using someone else's dreams. This is like trying to run a car factory using the blueprint for making televisions. The machinery is powerful, but it is designed for a specific purpose, your purpose. Maria's discovery taught her something profound. The factory had been producing all along, but she had been blind to the production. Once she recognized what was happening inside, she could begin to understand the output. The building was not abandoned. It was simply operating at a frequency she had not been tuned to receive. Your internal factory operates on the same principle. It has been producing thoughts, ideas, solutions, and creative insights continuously. But because you have been focused on external sources, you have missed the internal production. You have been shopping for what you have been manufacturing. You have been seeking what you have been creating. Every thought you think is a blueprint being processed by your internal factory. Every emotion you feel is raw material being transformed into experience. Every decision you make is a product being released into your reality. You are not the victim of your circumstances. You are the manufacturer of your circumstances. The quality of your output depends entirely on the quality of your input. Feed your factory with thoughts of limitation, and it will produce limited results. Feed it with thoughts of possibility, and it will produce expanded results. Feed it with thoughts of fear, and it will produce fearful experiences. Feed it with thoughts of faith, and it will produce faithful outcomes. This is why what you consume mentally is so crucial. Your internal factory cannot produce excellence if you are feeding it mediocrity. It cannot produce abundance if you are feeding it scarcity. It cannot produce success if you are feeding it failure programming. You must become as selective about your mental diet as you are about your physical diet. Maria realized that night that she had been living like a homeless person while owning a mansion. She had been begging for opportunities while possessing the ability to create opportunities. She had been waiting for someone to discover her talents while sitting on top of a talent manufacturing plant. The transformation in her life was immediate and dramatic. She stopped seeking external validation and started producing internal confirmation. She stopped waiting for perfect conditions and started creating perfect responses. She stopped looking for someone to believe in her and started believing in herself. Your internal factory is not broken. It is not insufficient. It is not outdated. It is the most sophisticated manufacturing plant ever created, designed specifically for your unique contribution to this world. The problem is not the factory. The problem is that you have been trying to manufacture someone else's dreams instead of your own. When you align your internal production with your authentic purpose, miracles begin to happen. When you stop trying to produce what others expect and start producing what you are designed to create, excellence becomes inevitable. When you recognize that you are the manufacturer, not the consumer of your life experience, everything changes. The factory within you is operational, productive, and powerful. Stop walking past it. Start walking into it. There was a farmer's son named David who decided to conduct an experiment that would change his understanding of potential forever. He took 2 identical seeds from the same packet, planted them in the same soil, under the same sun, at the same time. The only difference was his approach to nurturing them for the first seed. David borrowed water from his neighbors whenever he needed it. He would go to Mrs. Johnson's house for water on Monday, to Mr. Peterson's well on Tuesday, to the community fountain on Wednesday. He was always dependent on external sources to keep his plant alive. The plant grew, but it was weak, unstable, and constantly struggling for the second seed. David used water from his own well, the same well that had been on his family's property for generations. The same well he had walked past every day without recognizing its value. This plant grew strong, resilient, and abundant. It produced fruit that was sweet, lasting, and nourishing. The difference was not in the seeds. The difference was in the source of nourishment. One plant lived on borrowed resources. The other lived on owned resources. One plant developed dependency. The other developed independence. One plant survived. The other thrived. This is the secret that most people never learn. Your potential is not dependent on external resources, but on internal activation. You have been conditioned to believe that your growth requires borrowing from others. But the truth is that everything you need for maximum development already exists within your reach. You have your own well. You have your own source. You have your own supply. The problem is not that you lack resources. The problem is that you have not recognized the resources you already possess. You have been so focused on borrowing from others that you have neglected to tap into your own abundance. David's experiment reveals something profound about human development. When you rely on external sources for your growth, you create dependency. When you rely on internal sources, you create mastery. When you borrow strength, you remain weak. When you activate your own strength, you become unstoppable. The seed contains everything necessary for the tree. The tree does not create the seed creates the tree. The soil does not create the plant uses the soil. The sun does not create the fruit uses the sun. External conditions are merely catalysts for internal potential. You are not lacking what you need. You are not missing some crucial element. You are not waiting for someone to give you permission to grow. You are the seed, and everything required for your full expression is already encoded within you. The question is not whether you have. David learned that borrowed resources create borrowed confidence. When you depend on others for your sense of worth, your worth fluctuates with their moods. When you depend on circumstances for your peace changes with conditions. When you depend on external validation for your value is always uncertain. But when you tap into your own well, when you activate your own source, when you nurture your growth from your own abundance, you become independent of external fluctuations. You become the source of your own strength, the creator of your own confidence, the generator of your own peace. The seed's secret is simple. Everything you need is already within you. The tree's secret is even simpler. External conditions cannot determine internal potential. The farmer's secret is the simplest of all. You are responsible for recognizing and activating what you already possess. Stop borrowing what you already own. Stop seeking what you already have. Stop waiting for external activation of internal potential. Your well is deeper than you think. Your source is stronger than you know. Your supply is more abundant than you realize. The seed within you is ready. The only question is, are you ready to let it grow? Robert Mitchell spent 15 years traveling the world, searching for the perfect business opportunity. He visited Silicon Valley, toured manufacturing plants in Germany, studied markets in Singapore, and analyzed trends in Dubai. He was convinced that somewhere out there, in some distant location, lay the key to his financial freedom and professional fulfillment. After years of searching, countless flights, and depleted savings, Robert returned home defeated. He had found opportunities, but none felt right. He had discovered possibilities, but none matched his vision. He had encountered success stories, but none resonated with his purpose. Exhausted and discouraged, he sat in his backyard, wondering if he had missed his chance. That afternoon, while clearing some overgrown bushes behind his house, Robert discovered something that would change everything. Buried under years of neglect was a small workshop that had belonged to his grandfather. Inside, he found vintage woodworking tools, detailed plans for furniture designs, and a leather-bound journal filled with business ideas and customer contacts from decades past. His grandfather had been a master craftsman who had built a thriving furniture business right from this very spot. The workshop contained everything Robert needed: the tools, the knowledge, the space, and even the blueprint for success. The opportunity he had been seeking around the world had been waiting in his own backyard. Literally. This is the revelation that transforms everything. You are not a citizen of circumstances. You are the ruler of your internal kingdom. You have been traveling the world looking for opportunities that already exist within your domain. You have been seeking external kingdoms while neglecting the sovereignty you already possess. Within you lies a kingdom more vast than any territory, more rich than any nation, more powerful than any empire. This kingdom has its own resources, its own laws, its own potential for expansion. The problem is not that you lack a kingdom. The problem is that you have been acting like a refugee instead of a ruler. A king does not beg for what he already owns. A ruler does not seek permission to operate in his own territory. A sovereign does not wait for external validation to exercise internal authority. Yet this is exactly how most people live their lives. They have kingdoms but live like peasants. They have authority but act like subjects. They have dominion but behave like dependents. Your internal kingdom consists of your thoughts, your emotions, your decisions, your responses, your attitudes, and your actions. These are not democratic territories where everyone gets a vote. These are absolute monarchies where you are the sole ruler. No one else has the right to govern your thoughts. No one else has the authority to control your emotions. No one else has the power to make your decisions. But here is where most people abdicate their throne. They allow external circumstances to rule their internal kingdom. They let other people's opinions become the law of their land. They permit temporary situations to overthrow their permanent authority. They give away their sovereignty to anyone who demands it. Robert's discovery taught him a fundamental truth about success and fulfillment. The resources you need are not in some distant land. They are in your own territory. The opportunities you seek are not in someone else's kingdom. They are in your own domain. The answers you need are not in external circumstances. They are in internal governance. When you begin to rule your internal kingdom with the authority you were born with, everything changes. You stop reacting to circumstances and start responding from strength. You stop being controlled by emotions and start governing them with wisdom. You stop being a victim of your thoughts and start being the director of your thinking. The kingdom within you is vast, rich, and powerful. Stop traveling the world looking for what you already rule. Start governing what you already own. Your sovereignty is not something you achieve, it is something you recognize. Your authority is not something you earn, it is something you exercise. Your kingdom is not something you build, it is something you inhabit. The ruler you have been seeking is wearing your face. The kingdom you have been searching for is beating in your chest. Marcus stands before the same mirror today. But everything has changed. The man who once saw inadequacy now sees infinite potential. The person who once searched for someone else's reflection now recognizes his own unlimited power. The individual who once waited for external validation now generates internal confirmation. The mirror has not changed, but the eyes looking into it have been transformed. This transformation did not happen overnight. It began the morning Marcus missed his flight and truly saw himself for the first time. But like all profound changes, it required a complete rewiring of his relationship with himself and his understanding of where real power resides. The journey from seeker to finder is not about acquiring new abilities. It is about recognizing existing ones. It is not about becoming someone different. It is about becoming who you have always been beneath the layers of conditioning and limitation. It is not about finding yourself. It is about remembering yourself. Marcus discovered that the mirror had always been telling the truth. The problem was never his reflection. The problem was his perception. He had been looking at himself through the lens of what he lacked instead of what he possessed. He had been seeing himself through the eyes of his limitations instead of his possibilities. He had been viewing himself as a problem to be solved instead of a solution to be unleashed. When you stop seeking outside of yourself, several profound shifts occur. First, you stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being the architect of your experience. You realize that life is not happening to you, it is responding to you. Your circumstances are not controlling you, you are creating them through your thoughts, decisions, and actions. Second, You stop being dependent on external validation and start generating internal confirmation. You no longer need someone else to tell you that you are valuable. You know it. You no longer need perfect conditions to feel worthy. You create worthiness through your choices. You no longer need other people's approval to move forward. You approve of yourself. Third, you stop waiting for permission and start taking responsibility. You realize that no one is coming to save you because you do not need saving. No one is coming to complete you because you are already complete. No one is coming to give you purpose because you already have purpose. No one is coming to make you successful because you already possess everything required for success. Maria learned this when she discovered the factory within herself. She stopped being a consumer of other people's dreams and became a manufacturer of her own destiny. She stopped waiting for opportunities to find her and started creating opportunities from her internal resources. She stopped looking for someone to believe in her potential and started believing in it herself. David understood this through his seed experiment. He stopped borrowing strength from external sources and started tapping into his internal supply. He stopped being dependent on favorable conditions and started creating favorable responses. He stopped waiting for external activation and started activating his own potential. Where Robert grasped this when he found his grandfather's workshop. He stopped traveling the world looking for his kingdom and started ruling the territory he already possessed. He stopped being a refugee in his own life and started being the sovereign of his own experience. He stopped seeking external opportunities and started recognizing internal possibilities. But the most profound shift that occurs when you stop seeking outside of yourself is this. You become what you are always meant to be. Not a seeker, but a finder. Not a student, but a teacher. Not a follower, but a leader. Not a consumer, but a creator. Not a victim, but a victor. This is not about becoming arrogant or self-centered. This is about becoming authentic and self-awareness. When you recognize the power within yourself, you stop trying to take power from others. When you discover your own completeness, you stop trying to complete yourself through others. When you find your own worth, you stop trying to prove your worth to others. The mirror's reflection has returned to its original purpose, not to show you what you lack, but to remind you of what you possess. Not to reveal your inadequacies, but to reflect your capabilities. Not to highlight your limitations, but to display your potential. You are not a rough draft waiting for revision. You are not a work in progress waiting for completion. You are not a problem waiting for solution. You are the finished product of a perfect design, fully equipped for your unique assignment on this earth. The search is over. The seeking has ended. The external hunt has concluded. Everything you have been looking for in degrees and relationships and bank accounts and approval and circumstances and conditions has been staring back at you every morning, waiting for recognition. You have the mirror, you have the factory, you have the seed, you have the kingdom, you have the power, you have the potential, you have the purpose, you have the provision, you have everything you need because you have yourself. And yourself is enough. Stop seeking outside of yourself. Start recognizing within yourself. The treasure you have been digging for is not buried somewhere else. It is buried right here, within you. The king you have been waiting to crown you is looking back at you from every mirror. The approval you have been seeking from the world is the approval you give yourself. When you finally understand this truth, when you finally stop the external search and start the internal recognition, when you finally see yourself as you truly are rather than as you think you should be, everything changes. The mirror stops lying because you stop lying to yourself. The reflection becomes clear because your vision becomes clear. The image becomes powerful because you become powerful. You are complete. You are equipped. You are enough. The search is over. The finding has begun. Look in the mirror and see what has always been there. unlimited potential wearing your face, infinite power bearing your name, and eternal purpose beating in your chest. Seek nothing outside of yourself. Everything you need is already within you.